Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets podcast pioneer with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Carm Capriato, Remarkable Results Radio and another Town Hall Academy. Glad to have you here. Got a great topic today, advice to new shop owners. And we've got a great panel that has an incredible group, or if you will, mindset of knowledge. And they want to share some great ideas to help any new shop owner along the way. Before we get started, first of all, thank you so much for being here, because if it wasn't for you, we of course wouldn't have a podcast. And our passion couldn't be served to help improve the life of all of you. But we also have great partners that also make this available to you. You know, let's face it, your shop management system is the most critical tool in your shop. And Napatrax will move your shop into the SMS fast lane with on-site training and 6-day-a-week support and local representation. Find Napatrax on the web at napatracs.com. And AutoFix Auto Shop Coaching will help you shift your gears and redefine success. Imagine your business not just meeting, but exceeding all of your goals. There's a video of Coach Chris on the web at autoshopcoaching.com. And ready to optimize training with today's class. Powerful piece of software in just 5 minutes daily, boost knowledge, retention, and improve team performance. Start seeing results today. Join your peers at todaysclass.com. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. And one more thing I love to talk about is Breaks for Breasts. October of this year is when it happens, where your client will get free breaks if you participate in this program and work with your vendor on all of that. All the monies that are received and brought up to Breaks for Breasts, 100% of it goes to the Cleveland Clinic for this incredible breast cancer vaccine for triple negative breast cancer. Look carefully for a How Do I Get Involved in Breaks for Breast podcast we did with Laura and Leanne recently. I'd like to introduce my great panel. Hello, team.
Good afternoon, Carm.
Good to see you all here. Sean Gilfillan, Automotive Magic, Kenville, and Lake Hobekon. I was on that lake a month and a half ago, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
I was on a pontoon boat, and I think we went to dinner together.
We did. It was good times.
It was, and I think we jumped out of a plane together.
Yes, we did.
You're to blame. Thank you.
Talk
so
about
much
excitement, right?
Oh my God, it was life-changing. We have something up on Facebook or something. Both Tracy and I jumped out of a plane at some incredible height where everything down below us looked tiny and green. Thank you so much for that. Matt Wag is here, Accelerated Diagnostics and Automotive in Bennington, Nebraska. Hey, Matt.
Carm, thanks for having me.
Hey, you're also doing some. I'm glad you're here. You're also doing some coaching, I hear.
Just starting.
Good for you,
ready
man.
To give back. Yeah. Yes. Big goal of mine.
Yeah, I know it is. And you're extremely qualified, even though you are such a young shop owner. The more I'm meeting an awful lot of great young professional shop owners that have been recognized by their own coaches and saying, I think this would be a good thing if you came on and started to just take some clients on yourself, because you've done such a great job. We'd love to share that and have you help and lead other people. So Matt is working for and with Bill Haas, and Tom Petty is here from Petty Motorworks, Waretown, New Jersey. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Carmen. Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me on today.
Glad to have you here, my friend. Look, so we're here to talk about advice to new shop owners. This is a couple of things that I would love to see if it all comes out in our dialogue about having courage and backbone and the right mindset. And, you know, where does leadership fit into a new individual who either came up from the bays or had this fleeting idea that I'm now going to take what I have in my backyard and I'm going to make a legitimate shop out of it. Looking in discovering what your strengths and weaknesses are, I think is so critical, because in some cases, if you don't know how good you are at anything, you may fail at all. And then having money and capital and not spending everything that you make, and good systems and processes. And I think those are some really good pointers to start at. Matt, you have a great story. Matt's been on the show back, I think, after maybe a year and a half, 2 years, you were into your business, Matt. And you told a great story about having a business plan and not getting the money and going back and refining it, and then finally getting the loans that you needed to start. And of course, then I think maybe 2 years in, you got injured. Literally, I think you blew your elbow out, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
So I had a catastrophic injury, and it took me completely out of being a employee on the floor to now I have no choice but to operate the business and find people to do the work. It was quite interesting.
That reminds me about having stones or a backbone to be able to make the kind of decisions that you have to make in your early part in starting up a business.
Yeah. That was one of the toughest things for me personally. Was I'm typically an easygoing person. Just my personality style is I'm pretty laid back. I'm not very outspoken or boisterous or opinionated. And that's not always the best personality to have being a business owner. It can work, but you need to understand, like you said earlier, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And sometimes you don't know what they are till you get in a situation where you're forced to learn how to use these strengths or develop areas in where you're weak. A lot of things that I really struggled with early on, and even more recently, and I'm working through it, is just having a backbone, holding firm to what I built this business on and around and why I'm doing that, and not letting others walk on me. I've learned my personality style is very easy for people that are boisterous and strong personality style. And I very easily get, okay, yeah, we're going to do that. Or yes, we're going to do that. Okay, sure. Sometimes I need to be more direct. And that's what I've learned as a leader, that I have to be.
It's a double-edged sword though, too.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, if you're too strong-willed and too aggressive, then people pull back from you and don't want to offer their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too laid back, then they're going to walk on you. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. And I built my business around let's bring people in, let's put all of our ideas together and build something great. And so you're exactly right. I've had to really learn to walk a fine line with how to do that.
Yeah. Set expectations, learn how to delegate. Man, those are some tough things. I still have a hard time learning how to delegate things. Even when I know the person is more than capable of handling the task, I still have a hard time letting go of the thing that I think I should be doing.
It's amazing how much we don't want to let go as owners a lot of times, and just trusting in your people that they're going to get it done. And I think letting people make mistakes and fail at something without hammering them for messing up, and really kind of more in a, what did you learn from this? And then maybe even sharing. A lot of us go through it. It's the same stuff we all deal with. I think one of the biggest things for me was jumping on somebody's coattails, another business owner that had a big shop and had the things that I wanted and was where I wanted to be, and really kind of like partnering up. There's a lot of young, great shop owners out there. There's also some older gentlemen that really, are brilliant when it comes to running a business. And I've learned a lot from just networking with different shop owners and become lifelong friends. I mean, snowmobiling together, flying together, jumping out of airplanes together, things like that. But it's the relationships, I think, really made a huge difference as you continue to grow. You don't have to do it alone. There's plenty of people out there that are willing to jump in, help coach like you're doing, Matt, just help you move along. We want to see this industry as a whole rise.
Let's stop and dive into that peer support thing. Too many don't want to ask for help. Now, either they don't know about it or they don't want to be able to be vulnerable and say, listen, I don't know everything. I've stumbled here. And to think that the individual who is willing to help or they want to share information with has never been there before themselves. And the case is that everyone who wants to help anyone just wants to tell their story of recovery.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the male ego, and I'm sure the female ego too, to ask the question acknowledges that you don't know the answer. So you don't want to give up the fact that you don't know something, especially to a peer competitor. I don't feel that way. I've been a diagnostic guy. That's really what I've done my entire life. Only in the past 10 years have I owned my own business. But even the best diagnostic guys in the world need sounding boards. They need to say, hey, this is what I've done here. What do you think? Right? And you use other people's experience to your value. Having that network, that call a friend kind of scenario is really, really important.
So can you imagine, here's a diagnostic guy who now owns his own business. Wow. Did you ever diagnose your own business, Tom?
Well, I was very lucky early on. Listen, I entered my own business a little bit later than most. I was 52 when I opened the doors. I started it technically 3 years earlier, but I was 52 when I actually walked into the brick and mortar store. I came from a dealership. I'm wise enough at 50s to know that I don't know a lot, right, when it comes to running a business. So I leaned on a coaching service.
You don't know what you don't know attitude, and to basically just open yourself up and say, somebody teach me, somebody help me, somebody show me.
Well, I looked at it like this. I didn't have like the wealth or the luxury of time. I'm older. I need to nail this and be done in 20 years. If you do it by the school of hard knocks, it can take you longer than that. So you have to lean on the people that know more than you.
And that's kind of where I was at too, was, I've told this story before, but I have a wife and 3 kids. And at the time when we opened the shop up, all my kids were 10 or younger, and my wife stayed home with the kids. So I was a sole provider for my family. And I same thing, Tom, where I didn't have time to waste and play around. I had to get this business going. I had no choice, or we were going to be homeless. We had to put a lien against our mortgage on our house to get our bank loan and our financing. And I had no choice but to succeed. And so I had sought out people that, I'd gone to many shop owners, and most of them didn't want to give me the time of day. I'm just looking for a mentor, more or less. I found a great person, Sherry Stock, Lincoln, Nebraska, with InMotion. She gave me the time of day. She's 45 miles away, and I drove down there, and she gave me one of the best piece of advices that's led me to where I am today. But she said this: hire a coach as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And
that's great advice.
I took it to heart, and I did. And thank goodness I did.
We've been preaching that on the podcast for 9.5 years. And still there's some granite out there that just can't absorb it, accept it. And they will look at the echo chamber and find the answer that they want and then move on and do nothing.
Way too many businesses look at whether or not they're profitable based on whether their bank accounts are growing or whether their accountant tells them they have a tax liability towards the end of the year. You need to be at the helm of your ship, like daily, right? If not weekly. If you're not, how can you make course corrections?
Just think of the captain analogy. The captain doesn't steer the ship all by himself.
Very true.
That tax liability thing comes up sometimes. It's a write-off, or I'm buying a new truck, and all these things. I had some advice from my accountant when I first started my business. Oh, you need to go buy something. You made too much money this year. It's like, oh, all right. Go spend $40,000 on a new pickup truck instead of putting it in a bank or paying taxes on it. Looking back, I probably would have saved a lot of money if I didn't follow that philosophy for the first 7-8 years that I was really in business. Paying taxes doesn't sound like a privilege, but it really is. It means you're putting money aside and you're making money too. So without a doubt, knowing your finances is tremendously important. And that was actually how it works.
That was actually one of my talking points, because when business in growth phase, or if you're racking money, you're working your butt off around the clock, and your business is in growth phase, you definitely need to spend the money at the right times. Yeah. Otherwise, you will have a tax liability. I remember I was stockpiling money to make my move into the brick and mortar store. I waited until the end of the year, not listening or not thinking about it. And I got hit for all the money that I had income, where if I just made a purchase of a series of equipment that I know I'd need 3 months later, it would have been a tremendous improvement. So timing is important when it comes to having that money.
How about the word discipline?
Equipment would have been more of a better thing to buy than a nice pickup truck too.
True.
Hey, you're right. I mean,
Bitcoin.
Or that.
Yeah. You're investing in your business, fellas, and the kinds of assets that you would want to spend money on that help create revenue, a good client experience. Not necessarily does the new Ford Lightning bring value to the business. Well, I can drive people home. Sure you can.
Quickly.
Tom, based on what you're saying, one of your talking points is to use the field of dreams mantra.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me that.
So I've been a Boy Scout leader a long time, and I actually formed a troop with a group of friends because we thought we could do it better. And we took the mentality of making sure our program's right. In other words, what we're offering the kids, right? Are we camping enough? Are we offering skills? Are they exciting things? Are they high adventure programs? All these things that draw kids in, because we knew in a volunteer-based organization, if you didn't have a pool of parents right, and kids, you don't have the resources necessarily to have all those hands pulling on the rope. So when it comes to, I draw that analogy to automotive, if you have the processes in place, you have the proper equipment, you have a benefit package to offer your people, a good pay scale, you're monitoring the margins of your business so you're profitable enough to afford those things, that's the field you're building. That's your field of dreams. Because if you get that right, then your customers will fall in line, your employees will fall in line. Everything comes to you. You don't have to spend billions of dollars in advertising. You have to build what is successful, on that smaller level.
Yeah. Sean, my head is hurting right now. I'm listening to this. Tom makes all kinds of sense, but he's filling my head with all this stuff. I can't do it all. Oh my God. How am I going to? I got cars to fix. I got things to diagnose. I got marketing to do. I got payroll to pay. How do I deal with it, Sean?
Well, I think the biggest thing would be finding people that believe in why you started the business in the first place, that can kind of align with your goals and purposes of where you're going and really have that clear. Be willing to work on the business mindset. I had a gentleman, Steve Hickson, owns Arts Automotive out in Washington State. I've been snowmobiling to the top of Mount St. Helens with him. And he said that one piece of advice to me was, be willing to take on the job of not being needed, and don't get upset when it becomes a full-time job for you. And I was like, take on the job of not being needed, meaning every time something comes my way and I'm needed for something, I started journaling. What did I get pulled out of the shop for? What did I get pulled away from what I was doing? And really kind of started to take a focus on what did I need to replace in myself first. I started out in 2003, had a similar issue that Matt had. 2005, 2 years in, I jumped a really big jump in my quad and broke my leg. I was out for 6 months. At that point in my business, I had one employee. Same thing. It kind of stopped me from it's what forced me to work on the business back then. Otherwise, I'd probably still be the technician running around in the back of the shop because I felt like I was the only one who could get it done. Looking back, it's like, wow, I was told a bunch of times, if you're going to own a business, you got to run the business and find the people to help you make it grow and not get stuck in it. And that's a hard thing to back away from. Even we were talking earlier, letting go. It's really difficult for me even sometimes to let go of, a struggle in tech when he's working on a car and I got a trick. I'll usually pop in and show him. I used to dive in and push him out of the way and say, let me show you how to do this, And it's just like one of those wanting to be the hero instead of guiding them in the direction that's going to have them wake up as their own hero from within. And I think when you can create your team to be a team of heroes and or guides, where they're guiding the younger technicians coming into the business, you got like that wagon wheel of growth where you can be a hero and you can also be a guide. And I really have educated my staff on my thinking on that whole perspective, right? It's like my point of view is, how do we all guide each other to get better? When do we see an opportunity to help somebody that may be struggling, or when do we let them fall down and scrape their knees when you may have told them something 5 or 6 times and they're not listening, doing it their way, and then all of a sudden the knees hurt and you go, now remember that thing I told you? Let me show you something. Sometimes you just got to watch and let people struggle through. And I think that was the hardest thing for me when it comes to a productivity standpoint, where you could do it 5 times faster than the guy sitting there, but if they don't struggle, they're never going to learn themselves.
Correct.
Yeah, controlled failure is a valuable learning lesson. We used to have this expression in scouting, Boy Scouts troops are all the same, but they're not. There's different level of parent involvement. There's different level of youth involvement. Some troops are so youth ran that they can run themselves right into a ditch because kids don't have the experience. Others are so parent led that the kids never really grow up and gain what they're supposed to be learning from Scouts in the first place, which is that personal growth process. It's a fine line. You don't want to let your shop run itself into a ditch. They need to be coached and guided. A controlled level of failure at times.
Mm-hmm.
So look at guys, I go back to the fact that my head is just swimming with all this really good advice, but it's me and a couple of others kind of in the bays and helping out. And I've got 2 people in there. I got a really good, he's a friend, call him an A-Tech, and I'm working the counter and I take the book paper home at night. This is great advice, guys, but I'm just this small little shop and you're telling me I got to do all this stuff. Why would a coach want to come and help me and guide me and hold me accountable for? I can't even afford it. This is crazy. I'm turning off the player. I don't want to listen anymore.
I think go ahead, Tom.
Well, the first thing a coach is going to advise you on is how to understand what your margins are, your profits and loss, or loss, if that's the case.
Oh, so right under my own nose, I may have some problems, right?
Right.
I mean, I think I know what I'm doing, but I maybe don't.
Exactly. So once you get a handle on your KPIs, your key performance indices, when you'll get an understanding of, well, can I afford to add somebody? And if I can't, what do I have to adjust to add that person? And the first person you should be adding is somebody at the counter, unless that's where you choose to be, but somebody at that counter, because you need to be in that steering role or the overseeing role until your company can run by itself.
Hey, let's face it. Your shop management system is the single most important tool in your shop, period. NapaTrax has made selecting the right shop management system easy by offering the industry's best, most comprehensive SMS. Now, it all starts when a local representative meets with you to learn about your business and how you need to run it. After all, it's your shop, so it's your choice, and having local representation is a huge plus. Customizing tracks to your business, whether you're a one-person shop or a large multi-bay or multi-location company, a representative consults with you to help optimize your shop's workflow, efficiency, and profitability. Trax always has the flexibility to do business how you need to do it, which means it can also grow as your business grows. And unlike the other guys, we'll be there for you after installation with the best training and support in the business. Yes, a learning management system tailored to each role in your company. Simply put, Trax was designed and built for shop owners just like you. Visit us on the web at NapaTrax, that's NapaTracs.com. In the world of auto repair, every shop has its unique rhythm and challenges. At AutoFix Auto Shop Coaching, they understand that one size does not fit all. That's why we offer personalized business coaching, tailoring our advice to meet your shop's specific needs. Transform your operations with strategies and tools to streamline your workflow, reduce waste, and skyrocket productivity. And when it comes to the numbers, we've got you covered. Our financial management guidance helps you master your finances from cash flow to profit margins, ensuring your revenue grows stronger. Every day, AutoFix Auto Shop Coaching, empowering your shop to achieve more. Visit us at AutoShopCoaching.com. Transform your team with today's class, where automotive training is easy, quick, and fun. Just 5 minutes a day on our app can eliminate hours of looking up forgotten information later. It's perfect for technicians, advisors, and managers alike. Keep critical knowledge fresh and top of mind, ensuring your team operates at peak efficiency. Today's class is impactful, accessible from anywhere, and a bit of fun too, and we're not talking about after-hours pizza either. For training that gets results, turn to todaysclass.com. Matt, I want you to refresh part of your story that you and I were, a couple of years ago, and you told your story of how soon it was that you realized that, again, the responsibilities, the obligation you had to money in the house and family. And frankly, I'll bet you every young individual who wants to start a shop, no matter if they got a loan or they didn't, has the same burden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really scary, and
Absolutely.
there's a lot of uncertainties. And I went into this pretty educated, and I put a lot of due diligence in before I opened the business and pulled the loan. I had written out a very thorough, comprehensive business plan, and I'm really glad I did, because that helped really guide and create a path of success for us. That was kind of my framework before I got in with the coach. And then that coach just built off of all of that. I was a classic case of where when I opened my shop, I was the only one there. I was doing everything. My wife came a couple hours a day, worked the counter, and I had a plan. When I wrote that business plan, I wanted to get to the size I am today. And that was my goal. And it was like, if everything was perfect, this is how we would end up. You get to these points where it gets really tough and the going gets rough. And you're like, I don't know if I can continue to do this, or I don't, sometimes you get into a scenario where, like Carm said, there's just so much stuff going on. There's only so much time in the day to do it. You're overwhelmed because you're trying to take care of the customer. I was to the point where I had 2 technicians. I'm still wrenching on cars. This is about 7 months into business. I had 2 techs. I'm wrenching on cars. I'm writing the service for everybody. I was to the point where I needed a little bit of courage that, okay, my next step now, and I know I got to do it, but it's scary to take this on. I got to hire an advisor. because that's somebody that's not, I didn't view it as like, that's not somebody directly out there generating revenue. Now I have to use what we're doing to help pay this individual. But I didn't realize that person funds themselves once they come on. They make my job so much easier. But it took my coach saying, Matt, just do it. I needed a little bit of a push from somebody on the outside. And being a shop owner, sometimes it gets a little bit lonely at the top. And we tend to forget that there are others, like we've talked about here, that are willing to help and share advice. And sometimes we need to be open to a little more advice sometimes when we get stubborn.
Okay.
Sometimes it can make a world of difference, right?
Even
Stubborn.
still,
Yeah, every day.
point it out if you see it.
Yeah.
Right?
All
Is
of
that
us have the
stubborn
same,
with a capital S?
Oh, yeah.
all of us
Tom?
have this same problem because we're all in a field where we try to figure out what's wrong with things. And being able to do that, there's a fine line between stubborn and persistent. All right.
Oh, yeah.
My wife says I'm stubborn. I say I'm persistent. But you're
No,
right. And we can't let go.
Stubborn.
True.
You know,
So-
there was somebody said something wise also on the topic of hiring people and really looking at what the business generates overall. Each employee, like you said, they fund themselves, or, you know, having the mindset of looking at each employee as an asset to the company, not an expense. That was something I struggled with in the beginning too. How do I hire somebody else? Like, how am I going to afford them? But in reality, they should be, you know, at least 4 to 5 times generating, at least in the technician side, you know, what they're going to wind up getting paid out. A writer to keep their hands free and the customer's happy is also a very good accelerator to get that efficiency up. So always think of your employees as an asset.
Yep.
And if they ever become an expense, you got to cut ties and have them succeed elsewhere.
Yep.
Well, they're an investment. I mean, in every investment, you calculate an ROI. You know, okay, we buy a new alignment machine. How long is it going to take for us to recoup that money or whatever? You can run a spreadsheet on it. But an individual, you have to anticipate the increase in revenue based on their presence. And it's a little bit different.
Yep.
Sure is. Hey, anyone ever make a bad hire?
Oh, yeah.
It makes you get better at hiring.
It does. Everyone, you know, and that's something that's been really big for me, especially the last year and a half. Now our business will be 4 years old in September, but that's been one of the hardest things for me. I spent a lot of my career in management of different roles. You know, I spent some time in dealership. I spent time as a training manager with a company where I was a training instructor, and I had it very easy is what I learned. And I had very easy people to manage. And now that you come into a shop, and especially a new shop, you have different types of people to manage that I wasn't experienced managing, that have different needs, different behaviors, different attitudes. I learned early on that I was hiring the wrong people. And I was hiring off of resumes and what they're, okay, he's got 4 or 5 ASEs. I need a good tech right now. Well, I wasn't asking the right questions in the interviews, and I wasn't finding out what this person's true intentions were, or could this person really problem solve? You know, sometimes people are book smart, and then I would get them in the bay and they couldn't tie their shoes, or you find out people have attitude or behavior issues, attendance issues. And I've learned with every person I hire, I get a little bit better at picking out who really fits what I want our business to be and where do I want the business to go, who can help get us there. And that takes a lot. And you have to learn the hard way, I feel, when it comes to that. And I'm sure you guys agree with that too.
That's where I think having that clear why you open a shop in the first place, and it's really got to, you know, everybody's opening a shop for their own reason, but it's really got to tie into the almost unconscious beliefs that the people you want to bring on board that are going to be good hires believe the same thing, taking care of people, doing the right thing when nobody's watching, like all those high value ways of being that a lot of great people in the world. You just got to find the right ones.
When you have a shop in a neighborhood or an area, even if it's a business area, and it could not necessarily a neighborhood, you still have loyal customers. And you have to have the culture of your shop prepared to service those loyal customers, because if they're not going to keep coming back. Right. And smaller shops, really, that's their point. When I opened a shop with my son, I said to him, you know, and I came from a small shop when I was young, right? You know, 3 bays and a little shop in a high dollar area. So it was, you know, easier to get by, but it was based on customer loyalty. You treated the customer right, not necessarily cheap. Right. Right. Using quality parts, good customer service, you're friendly and kind and honest, and they'll come back. right? And without good staff, how could you possibly pull that off?
It's almost
One
impossible.
a-hole in your group can ruin it.
Very quickly.
Yep.
Another thing, the commitment to training.
Yeah.
Another wise thing, I don't remember which one of along the years, which shop owner said it. There was that fear of like, well, what if I spend all this money sending these guys out and training them? And the response was, well, what if you don't send them out and train them and they stay? If I spend the money and train them and they leave versus not training them and having them stay, could be even more detrimental.
It is.
A very good friend of mine who mentored me when I was a young technical trainer. His name was Jim Morton. I'm sure you guys know him.
God, yes.
Yep. He, it pays to train. Training doesn't cost, it pays. And it's so true.
Let's talk about that. Being a perpetual student, I talk about it a lot, or being a forever student. I've just been on a rant of late telling people that they got to go to night school. And when they look at me weird, I'll say it's really called adult education today.
Yep.
Carm, I don't have time for that. And then I talk to them about the podcast. We're in the 900 episodes of remarkable results, through almost 400 with the Academy and so many of the other shows that we do on the network. It's adult education for shop owners.
Yep.
And I go back to Matt. Matt, you took adult education. That was the most fascinating thing. He says, yeah, I went and took some night courses so I could write a good business plan. And it taught me so much.
Yeah. And that was part of what I knew it was going to take, because I didn't know what I realized that I didn't know what I was getting into. And I knew I wanted to very much own a business. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have family members that had ever done it. I've got to get educated in some way, shape, or form. And the only way to do that is what do I know? There's a community college here in town. Let's look up their catalog. And I found an entrepreneurship 101 class. And that class changed my life. Wild story about that. The lady that taught me in that class actually was a customer in our shop about a month ago. And I was able to say, hey, I know this was a while back that I took this class and you probably don't remember me, but I am here because of you today. Thank you. And that was
Awesome.
just huge to me and to her. But you know what? That's what you have to do. And you've got to just get that mindset that I've got to continue to get better every day. And that's the part of the culture that I've learned to build into my company. And now when I go to hire people, I'm looking for that trait, is people that, you know what, I'm really fed up with where I'm at because they're not investing in me getting better. I don't want to be doing only tires in 5 years. I don't want to, and so I'm looking for little things that these people are saying like that. And I'm like, this is somebody that deserves to be here, because I'm going to continue to develop you. But me as a leader, it's important for you to know too, that I develop myself constantly. I'm never settled. And it goes back to even before I opened the shop, like Carm said, I took classes at the university, the community college, and it wasn't that I went and got a full degree, but I got the little bit of pieces I need to get to the next step. And that's what I could do with the time that I had in the day, and it worked. And you know what? Could it have been a little easier if I had done more? Sure, but it worked. The other thing too was when I worked a full-time job leading up to this business, and I've told Carm this several times over the years, but I listened to Remarkable Results. I traveled a lot for my job. I was on the road a lot, and I would drive to go deliver training seminars and classes. And I would put the podcast on while I would drive 8 hours. I would just pick out different episodes, and I'm just soaking that up. And all that, not all of it'll stick, but little pieces do. And you remember that stuff.
It helps form and shape where you think you want to go until you actually start pulling the levers. You said something really important about 35 seconds ago about leadership. Sean, I want to go to you. I think it's one of the things that we absolutely have to talk about. We talk about culture a lot, but then to me, culture and leadership are almost kind of hooked at the hip.
Yeah, they do hook at the hip. It's a right leg and left leg type of thing, right?
Yeah, let's talk
legs,
about,
you need them both.
Let's talk about the fact that you as an individual who wants to build the great advice to new shop owners, leadership's on top of that list, probably in the top 3.
Yeah, and really, and it really starts at the top, right? Like your own personal leadership and development, understanding people's personality traits. When you said something earlier about how the different ways that people are with their personality types, any of those disc analysis tests or strength finders, those assessment tests that you can run on yourself. Really, for me, that was eye-opening back in 2010 to understand where my strengths were, my superpowers, let's call them.
Yeah.
And really looking to develop those versus trying to develop the things that I wasn't so good at. And then finding those people around you that are going to be stronger in the areas where you're weak. It's like almost putting a bicycle tire together and all the spokes that you need. But continuously developing leadership shows up really when the other leaders that you're growing in your company start to grow leaders below them. You can see it kind of happen and transform. My entire staff actually was just over the last year, we've gone through 2 20-week-long leadership coaching apprenticeships. Every Monday it was a lunch and learn during the day. And I know we're going to be talking in a podcast about workforce development, but a lot of the states around the United States and the SBA, there's all kinds of business programs or reimbursement programs where it's a little bit of paperwork. You might spend 3-4 hours doing and filling out the papers, but they really reimbursed our shop for the entire leadership program for my entire staff, which was expensive. And I had to lay the money up front. And after it's all said and done, they got their certificates. They're worth more to the company. The reimbursement was just such a huge help because the more we can develop our people and the more stress and strain we can take off the financials of the shop, man, it's going to grow a lot faster when you can really focus on leadership. It was really cool to start seeing the people on our team between the 2 locations start to collaborate more and understand that I've got a real direct personality or I'm a supportive one and they don't push each other around, or when they have to deal with conflict back and forth with each other, it was like, holy crap, they actually dealt with it without dad having to be there to like, hey, guys, come on, calm down. Let's talk about this. Like they worked it out and like standing back and going, holy cow, I can't believe this is happening.
They don't need me anymore.
Well, and that's the other swing side of it, the double-edged sword. Now I feel like, man, they don't need me around. What am I going to do? Which is
and that's a great thing.
A great place to be, but it is.
People have to stop and realize that that's really a good thing, because unless you didn't plan it, if you didn't plan to get that feedback saying, wow, I'm really leaning on my people to make great decisions on their very own, that's a positive thing. We're talking about self. And, it's advice to new shop owners. It's really the self, the individual who wants to start a shop, who thinks they can't work for anybody but them. Maybe there's an internal opportunity to do a succession plan, but still, you just don't sit on an individual's coattails of a business. Maybe the business isn't running as well as it should, and we want to be a better self. Going back to knowing your DISC profile and what kind of individual am I? Am I having my conversation with somebody and if they're the opposite of me, that's not going to set well. Yeah. And also to know your strengths. And I got to tell you a great story about me and Sean. We found out that we did Clifton Strengths Finders, and he put me on task. Sean, remind me if I'm right or wrong. I do believe this is you. And you said, so what's your top 5, Carmen? And I told him what my top 5 are. And he started to tell me his 6th and his 7th and his 8th. And then I said, oh, I didn't go that far. He goes, you cheap. He says, get off your wallet, spend the next $30 and find out what all of your top 30 strengths are. It goes from the top to the bottom. And I go, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. And so if you will, we're starting to compare charts, and I couldn't go any deeper than 5. And to me, Sean at that moment in time was a peer of mine. He was we were just talking about, what does this mean and how did that work for you? You can find help and support and people who want to give. The top people of our industry didn't get there on their own, and they want to give back. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of our industry and the beauty of people coming on the podcast when willing to share, because our job, our purpose for Remarkable Results Radio, our company, Aftermarket Radio Network, is to make people's lives better. Mm-hmm. Right. Period. That's it.
The art of self-evaluation is difficult, especially for the young ones today. The older class, they can look at themselves and pick things apart, but that's a really important skill. Yeah. When things aren't going right, you really need to look at yourself first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It's always here. When you're pointing out there, 3 fingers back at you, right? Yep. The first Strength Finder test I remember doing, it was like 2010, and I know in the top 5 was competitive or competition and achiever. And I always had to be the best at it, right? And I was always competing with everybody in the shop, and I was like pushing everybody down. When I retook that test in 2019 or 20, those moved down into the 20s, which was pretty neat because you can see the actual personal transformation I had where I'm not trying to be the best. I'm trying to create the best. right? And you saw those ones rise to the top where that individualization strength for me, seeing the strong parts in the people around me was always my number 2 in every single one. So I kind of count that as my number 1 strength. The 4 different buckets were executing, relationship building, influencing, and strategic thinking.
Wow.
All 34 fit into those. But like you look at your service advisor, and if you got somebody that's executing and strategic, they're going to be that slimy guy behind the counter trying to make the sale instead of building the relationship and influencing the customer to take good care of their vehicles, right? So you really want to take those main 4 buckets of that assessment, and you can really set the people in the right seats based on that. So it's definitely a neat way to look at it. And most people act that way unconsciously based on the way they were brought up. It's
personality traits. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Like you're not going to take somebody that's a relationship and influencing type of person and turn them into somebody that's going to execute and be strategic. It's just not going to happen. So make sure your people are in the right seats. And if they're not, be willing to move them around and let them know where you see the strong things. And I think it's a lot easier to raise the tides of your entire shop by pointing out what your people are doing good, as opposed to pointing out the things that they're not so good at. If there's not a seat on the bus for them to do what they're good at, they might not belong on the bus with you. So be willing to kind of move people around and be transparent and open with it.
This was an incredible episode. So much here. We could probably go on for 3 hours and have something new every 10 minutes to talk about. But our goal here was to, if you will, whet the appetite of people who want to start a shop or are just starting a shop. And what do I have to do now? How can I get better at what I do? Let's go around the room. If there's anything on your talking points list that we didn't cover, please bring it up and we'll put a nice bow on it. We'll go to Tom, Matt, and then Sean. Tom?
Well, I think we hit on a lot of the important points. I think the most important point that young guys or even older guys like myself that enter a business, you have to first evaluate yourself, understand your weaknesses. And if you're not prepared to fill in those weaknesses like Matt did, and myself, obviously, you need to buy the people that will help you fill in those holes. So really that is, I think, is one of the most important things to do early on. Before you even have a building or put the key in the door, that has to happen first.
So fix you and understand you.
Yes. And understand where you're weak, right? And understanding what you don't know is not always easy, right? Because you don't know it.
I said fix you. I want to fix that. I don't really necessarily mean fix you. I want you to understand you better. And then you fix the problems that you have some weaknesses in, because I'm positive everyone has great strengths. And build it to them, learn more about them. Just find where those weaknesses are and go fill them. Matt, how about you?
I think just to wrap it up, I think the big thing is just have a little bit of courage, believe in yourself, do those things that you want to do. But also, there's always going to be some risk that comes along. Anything great that you want to do, that just means that you have a strong enough goal and a desire. It means it's worthwhile if it stresses you out and it's hard to achieve. But don't let that stop you from taking on what you want to do. You're not going to get to where you want to be without putting in the hard work. And sometimes hard work, it is difficult, and it's going to test your commitment and your patience. And so just believe in yourself and put the effort forth that you can do it. I realized too, very early on, the things I thought were going to be really difficult with owning and operating and running a business were the things that were probably some of the easiest things. How am I going to get the bays full? How am I going to get this type of car fixed? How am I going to get customers in here? That was some of the easier stuff for me personally. The harder stuff was managing people, getting the right people in, holding people accountable. Those are the things that typically somebody coming from a technician role and going into a management role, that's things we don't think about. And then you've got to learn real fast, how do I do that stuff? So take on a coach, go to training events, take leadership classes, read books, do things to help better yourself every day. And then that's what's going to help you. Never stop learning.
Great advice. Thank you. And you brought up a very interesting word that we really didn't cover a lot on, and maybe we should come back and do it: risk. And people have to stop and think that money is made to help you recover the risks that you take in time investment. I mean, this is your business, and everything that got it to where it is, you deserve payment for. So go out and make it. And everything and every decision you make is a risk for today and the future. So thank you so much for pointing out risk. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sean?
One of the biggest things is making sure you set some time aside to work on yourself, work on the business. That one thing made such a difference for me was take on the job of, in the future, not being needed and being okay that it's a full-time job. Something that I would suggest is kind of have a little black book or journal in your pocket that every time you get pulled off or you feel like what's holding you back from working on the business, you write a list out. And a lot of times you'll see a lot of the similar things that are pulling you away from the time where you're too busy to work on your business or too busy to listen to a book. Yeah, you can do it in the car, driving back and forth. A lot of times we're talking to ourselves about the crappy day going on in the background, right? And not able to really listen. But setting that time aside, I think, is the most important. And discovering what takes your most time away and find somebody else to do what that is. And that's the biggest advice I can give with freeing up as much time as possible, as fast as possible, is replace the biggest time robber that you document down in that little black book you carry around in your pocket.
Yep.
I just love his summary, and it reminded me of Michael Corleone. And I'll explain to you what I mean. It was the third Godfather when he's standing in his kitchen and he says, every time I try to get out, they keep pulling me back in. Remember that?
Yep.
And it would be like, I just love to diagnose cars. So you get pulled back in, and I love it. Why was it? Was it training? Was it lack of equipment? Or was it the fact that they didn't want to take the initiative on their own? I was too convenient to ask, and I was walking by, and I, in a weak moment, because I love this stuff, I got back in. It's, Michael Corleone went back in it because he loved it, not because, he did or didn't have a choice. And I love that. That's a great point. This was great, everyone. I appreciate this. Sean Gilfillan, Automotive Magic in New Jersey, late Hopkathon in Kenville, New Jersey. Also Magical Solutions and LifeCalibration.com. We forgot to talk about that, but great things that Sean is doing to help the industry. Matt Wag from Accelerated Diagnostics and Automotive, Bennington, Nebraska, and a coach for Huss Performance Consulting. And Tom Petty from Petty Motorworks, Waretown, New Jersey. Napa Gold, right?
Yes, sir.
Congrats to you on that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here, team. Appreciate this.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.
Keep up the good work.